Good Life, Great Careers podcast. My name is Brian Svick, and I'm the Director of Workforce Training and Development. And I'm joined once again by my co-host, Caitlin Betts, who is the Director of Talent Acquisition for the state of Nebraska. If you're new to the podcast, the purpose of this podcast is to help bring awareness to the fact that state government, Nebraska State Government, is not only the largest or one of the largest employers in the state, but probably the most diverse when it comes to career opportunity. There are hundreds of opportunities right now that are open and available for you to begin a career with Nebraska State Government, ranging from law enforcement to game and parks to nursing. There's just a plethora of opportunities to start and build a career within Nebraska State Government. And so what we do with these podcasts is each episode we bring on a different state teammate to talk about their own career journey, to talk about their agency, and tell us a little bit about the opportunities maybe that are within their agency as well. And so we're really excited about our guest today. Our guest is Tammy Foley, who has an extensive career with the Nebraska State Government, and so we're excited to hear her story. She currently works for the Department of Health and Human Services. Tammy is a Clinical Nurse Supervisor. Did I get that correct?
You did.
All right. And so, Tammy, we're so thankful for you to take time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us today and share with us and our listeners a little bit about your journey, opportunities within your agency as well. And so let's just start off by having you tell us about yourself.
Well, when I went to college, I was a geek in biology, but I really didn't want to teach K through 12, and I didn't want to really work for a pharmaceutical company. And my advisor at that point in time says, well, there's nursing programs. You could get your bachelor's for a 12-month program because you have so many of your prerequisites. And so I applied and ended up at Creighton and did a 12-month program and came out with my BSN. And during that time, worked at St. Joe's Hospital. We're in a community there. And I had the perfect job. I worked in a step-down unit from intensive care, and we got to deal with all the issues of people that had multiple traumatic injuries, and we had to be very creative in how we helped them stay healthy and recover, because it's so different, and you can't just roll to make sure you don't get skin breakdown if you cannot roll, if you can't be in a different position. So we got to use lots of new toys that were coming out for care, but we got to work with these people who were so desperately sick, and we got to see these wonderful things happen because we were so creative with it. And then they got into some financial difficulty, and they started having to lay people off, and they finally said, you're in the next layoff in 3 months. And so I started looking for a job, and at the time I knew a friend here. Her mom was the night security guard in the state office building, and she said there's always jobs at the center down there, and she was talking about the Lincoln Regional Center. So I put in an application and eventually went through a couple interviews there, and then started in 1984 on evenings with one of the youth programs there. And it wasn't necessarily my fit because it was psych, and I really liked the hands-on nursing piece, but then I kind of found out that I kind of liked it. And then I was successful in moving around with different groups of youth in that building, and got more and more responsibility, and eventually became an associate director of nursing there. And then there was some reorganization, and the one position that I eyed was the nurse supervisor in the staff development department, the training department. And so when they reorganized and there was a reduction in force, that was one of the options I had available to pursue. And went for that, and ever since I've been in training. And so I've gotten to work with different areas, and instead of just working with the folks at the Lincoln Regional Center, and eventually I got, at that time, the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs homes, the four veterans homes were under DHHS, and I got to supervise those nurses. And eventually got some of the trainers at the YRTCs and at Beatrice. And so I've gotten to learn a lot about those different areas as well. And then in 2016, I think it was, the Department of Veterans Affairs we already had a State Department of Veterans Affairs, but they took those 4 veterans' homes under that umbrella. So didn't work with them as much, but continued with the other facilities. And that's how I got here. So all in all, when I tried to figure out like how many moves or different things I've done since 1984, I've probably had 8 or 10 different jobs. And it's either because I said I either asked to move or I was asked to move to work with different youth populations or different adult populations. While I was at the regional center, that was more of the moves. And then the others have just been how the agency has changed and moved along since.
Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of great experiences, a lot of different experiences over the years. When you spoke with your friend's mom and you found out there was opportunity, were you expecting for your career to be long-term, or was it just kind of a placeholder at that point?
It was kind of a placeholder. I'm not a person who I was driven to be a nurse. I have 3 of those people on my team. They wanted to be a nurse. I was thrilled about, like I said, I'm a biology geek, and that was one way that I could manifest that. And so I like it. I do better in the training part of it. I do better in the supervision part of it because I recognize I've got people who are excellent at it. I don't have to be excellent or an expert at it. I have them on my team, and I need to stand behind and get people out of the way and help lower the beams so they don't have to jump over them so high. That's my job to do. And a lot of times facilities are like little towns, and they have their quirks, and they are so they are so involved with themselves, they don't really see outside the bigger picture and the options, and it's my responsibility to bring that in.
So as you started your career with state government, and at the outset, not necessarily with the mindset of, okay, this is going to be my career, over the course of that time then, as you progress through that career, what are some of the surprises, or what surprised you most? I don't know if you came into working for state government with a preconceived notion of what it would be like or what it was, but were there any surprises that's like, oh, this isn't really what I expected, maybe good or bad?
Yeah. Well, when because I was able to give like a 6-week notice at one job, which you do when because they gave me a leave of absence for a year. Instead of taking a resignation, they gave me a leave of absence. They said, you're a good employee. We'd like to get you back if we can. So at the end of that year, I sent my little note in saying, I'm happy where I'm at, and I got another year extension of a leave of absence. So the 3rd year, I finally said, well, obviously you're not coming back. So that was okay. I liked the people. There was, I always wanted to go on to school, and I had the ability to do that. But I saw people coming in that barely could manage their own home and responsibilities in jobs, and we were able to give them the skills to do a really good job and be people that we depended on. And I think people need to be needed, and they need to be important, and they are important with the work that we do within state government. We see some of the most desperately needy clients, whether that's intellectual and developmental disabilities, youth with behavioral issues, or potentially mental health, even lifetime mental health issues, trauma issues, adults with the same kinds of things going on. States kind of moved into being more forensic in that the people in the mental health facilities are dealing with also mental health issues of some kind. And so we don't see your typical voluntary patient. We see the people that are most resistive to treatment, not actively resistant. Their system doesn't respond to the things that we can offer medication-wise or sometimes therapies-wise and stuff. And so they're a very needy population, and you have people that came in that oftentimes are almost on that verge of being the needy ones too. And you're able to help them get skills that will help them become caregivers of these folks and help them bring them forward as much as they can. And it's interesting to watch them become experts in their own right without any diploma, without, going to school. They're getting a school of hard knocks at work, and they do a tremendous job. And so the people is what's kept me the most, and coworkers as much as working with clients. So,
how many? I guess, and I'm sure it varies, but how many nursing physicians are there? In each facility, is it about the same, or is it vary
varies
quite a bit?
Okay. At the YRTCs, like at Kearney and Hastings, there's like one nurse who's kind of the supervisor of the nursing department, and then there's one or two others. And all of their staff that are frontline staff eventually become medication aides, and they get on the registry, the public health registry. So that works out very well for them, and they're able to manage pretty well. And for the most part, it's a healthy population. The Lincoln program, since it's very small, they contract for their nursing positions, so we don't have anybody working specifically there. At the Whitehall program, there's a supervisor and then one or two others. They prefer to have two. At Beatrice, there's about 6 or 7 RN positions, but I think they're in the 20s when you talk about LPN positions, because there's a lot of treatments and those kind of things that an LPN can do, where the RN would be the person coordinating the care. And they can make the assessments, where an LPN, their assessments are limited, and it's based by licensure requirements and statute. At the Norfolk Regional Center, they run about, I think, 45 RN positions, and they take LPNs as well. A lot of the areas, if they're having trouble hiring RNs, they underfill with an LPN. We're also very fortunate in state government that, we do have tuition reimbursement, and many people start out maybe as a med aide, or not even being a med aide or on a registry, and they go to school, become an LPN, then they can keep going to school, become an RN, and work through the system. And that's not unheard of. In fact, I know of 2 people that started as frontline staff and ended up working all the way up and are nurse practitioners. One still works with DHHS. So that works out pretty well. The Lincoln Regional Center would be the largest, and they run usually about 60 to 65 RNs, including their supervisors, and they have, I think, about 18 LPNs if they're full staffed. So at the veterans homes, I'm not sure of the numbers, but they have quite a few RN positions at each site. Like the Kearney site is a large site. Bellevue is a large site. They're going to have, 15 to 20, but they're also going to have a lot of LPN positions, a lot of nurse aide and med aide positions there too, which would fall under nursing and hopefully bring people into nursing, because it's a good field to go into. The smaller ones, the Norfolk is kind of in between. The Scotts Bluff one is probably the smallest one. It has the population that doesn't need as intensive nursing care, so they have a smaller number of RNs and LPNs. But otherwise, in DHHS, you also have public health, where you're going to have nurses dealing with going out to survey all these agencies that provide care. So it's whether it's nursing home, intermediate care facilities, making sure that care is good. So they're surveying, several months out of the year, and they're running around all over the state figuring those kinds of things out. They're also reviewing, for example, at Beatrice, we have our own medication aid program. We have our own CARES basic skills program. It doesn't necessarily hit the nurse aid programs, but at the veterans homes they would have those. just because the licensure of the facility, they can be intermediate care staff. So they have to review all of the trainings that we do for them. They have to meet certain criteria. So they're constantly either reviewing those or coming out and observing us. There's also people just working on keeping track of all these people that are licensed and what's going on with those licenses, and people are coming from out of state. We are part of I think it's a 17-state compact. There's a process for getting licensed in Nebraska, so they're dealing with those kind of issues as well. So, yeah, they're pretty busy too.
Well, it sounds like it. It sounds like there's also just a ton of opportunity for nurses in a lot of different areas of focus. However, it's not a secret that there's a national nursing shortage. So, share some of us with how that's impacted you and what you would say to someone that maybe hasn't considered a career with the state of Nebraska in nursing specifically.
What I've seen happen because of the nursing shortage is if you're working on the units with clients, you're just doing the things that absolutely an RN has to do or absolutely an LPN has to do. And we've tried to figure out creative ways to utilize staff in other areas, even with supervision. We've added in, the DHHS added in a layer for our two larger facilities in Lincoln and Norfolk, so that there are supervisors of the frontline staff who are not licensed, but they're kind of psych nurse aides is what they end up being, so that the nurses are not bogged down with supervision responsibilities, and then those supervisors answer to the nurse supervisors. So that took out a lot of that frontline supervision that they had to do, so freed them up to do that kind of work with clients. And we put in people that do a lot of the plans and the paperwork and the meeting with the client and some of the work to get the communications out. So there's different layers in there instead of having the nurses do that. If we can have someone else do it, and we're doing that, and they're just doing the things that they need to do. Now, on some level, you miss that because you don't get as much client contact. However, it's still making a tremendous difference.
So you talked about LPNs and RNs, and so could you talk a little bit about the difference between those two roles? And then if somebody's interested, maybe they're listening to this, or like my daughter, for example, who's she's still in high school, but she's thinking about career opportunities. She's talked about going into nursing. What would that path look like? So if you could share a little bit the difference between the two and then the path.
Well, one of the things, since nursing schools are so busy, it's hard to get into them, is they've made a requirement that you have to have already a 40-hour med aid, be on the registry for that. You've already had to complete, in Nebraska, it's a 76-hour class. Most places teach it in about 80 hours for certified nursing assistant type of course, and you'd be on the registry. That takes care of a lot of your first year of nursing. I always say shoot for as high as you can go, as fast as you can, because you do end up, RNs will make more money. RNs can take on more responsibility because by statute, they can make assessments of clients and they can act on behalf of physicians based on the policies of your facility. That being said, if I can't get into an RN program, I'm going to go for the LPN program because LPNs will learn a lot of the task work. Now, RNs are learning that too, but it's a lot of the task work that happens with nursing. It's passing the meds. It's changing dressings. It's checking heights and weights and things that you kind of have to do with growing populations or populations that are vulnerable to cardiac issues or whatever, and then the routine kind of things. The biggest thing about an RN to an LPN is their ability to make assessments and act on behalf of other licensed professionals like a physician. So, and that's why you have a doctor on call after hours, but you have nurses, RNs there. and RN's reachable. Now, in some of our areas where it's maybe an intermediate care facility, they're on call. They don't have to be there, but they'll have LPNs on site. But that's usually because your population is stable and for the most part, a well population. So that kind of helps too. And so our YRTCs and the Beatrice program would fit kind of into those categories. But the Norfolk and Lincoln Regional Centers, you've got RNs there 24/7.
You share that you've taken advantage of some of the development opportunities and tuition reimbursement. What are some of your other favorite perks or benefits of working for the state of Nebraska?
I said I had how many different jobs, and I never had to start over with vacation or sick time. So that has been a real benefit.
Nice. Yep.
When I started, back in the dark ages of the 80s, you did not have to participate in the retirement system until you hit 25. And I remember hitting 25 or being here for so long, and then I remember looking at my paycheck, like, how do they expect me to live on that? That 4.8% came out for retirement. And it didn't take too long. You start getting those little Nebraska Public Employee Retirement System sheets in the mail, and you start seeing, oh my God, this is adding up. There is no way that I could put a fourth of what's in there away in my work history. Now, I'm going on 38 years here, but that has been a comfort to me. I remember when I bought my house, it was they were doing a push, kind of trying to get more single women into homes and home buying, and so I go in and I talk to this person at Union Bank, and they said, "Well, what's your backup here? You don't have a lot here down, and what's your backup?" And I says, "Well, I work for the state of Nebraska. I've got how much vacation time I earn every 2 weeks, and I have this amount of sick time that I earn every so often." And at that time, I think I did carry the additional insurance because it wasn't too far into things, but it made me a good candidate for those. And I said, and while I'm using it, I'm still earning it. And so I basically, I kind of typed up kind of what I needed. I took it over to HR. HR said, "Yeah, we can verify all those things for you," and they just faxed it to Union Bank, and I got a loan. I got a house. It got me started to get some equity built up. So little things like that, I think, mean a lot. A lot of people don't think about it, but if you're in private, you get about 5 holidays a year. And while some of those holidays don't necessarily fall when I'd like to have them, having that day off means a lot. You can do a lot of things those days. You can plan, and a lot of them are in conjunction with a weekend. So even if you're not high seniority, you could still kind of get a little mini vacation in here and there. The tuition reimbursement was a big one for me. It's a percentage of what the university would pay. It's not going to be all of it, but it's a share of it. And then there's also it wasn't in fact when I had student loans, but there's a certain amount of student loan forgiveness for certain jobs, and that would be a worthwhile piece too. And there's a lot of learning activities. The Employee Development Center and the adding in LinkedIn Learning, we have that free in DHHS. There's opportunities to look at other things to do too. So you can develop your skills as a supervisor. You can develop your communication. There's learn how to play the mandolin or the bass guitar if you wanted to, so there's just all kinds of things in there, and there's a lot of things. I enjoy them for after hours. It's entertaining to do some of those things, so that's already gotten into that too. So I think I hit most of the benefits that I've really enjoyed.
And I'll just add, you mentioned the teammate contribution, but the state also matches retirement at 156%,
Yes.
which is, I think, unheard of, and definitely something maybe like when I started out, I didn't think a whole lot about now, but I get those mailers too, and I think, wow, this has really grown over my career, and, I'm excited for that day way in the future when I can, use that and retire. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's not just my money there; it's their money there, and they're putting in quite a bit of money. And it's always interesting because it's like I have my contribution, and then theirs is like 1.5 times. My goodness, it's wonderful to see. It makes you think about because people have said, well, you don't get paid as much. Yeah, I don't. But I have, how many more holidays that I have time away, that if I wanted to have another job, I could work those days, or I could still work other times. But I also get, every quarter, I'm getting this amount of money to help me. And that's money that I wouldn't have put away. They put it away for me. I've got that to look forward to.
Is there anything we have not touched on that you would like to add or share about your own journey, about your agency, any advice you would give?
I don't want people to come and work in these care areas for a job. I want somebody to come because they want to do service for people. They have a service mindset. They want to develop themselves. They want to help other people succeed, and they are looking for a career because there are so many opportunities. We don't have a lot of levels that you can move up, but you can become very important and a real leader in the role that you're in and do tremendous things for the people that you're on the teams that you're working with.
If any of our listeners are interested in learning more, either about career opportunities, specifically in nursing with the HHS, or just overall with the HHS, where could they learn more about your agency and the different opportunities?
Well, the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, I would probably just go to the website. They could probably get more information there, or at least some people to contact. But DHHS, there's quite a bit on our website about I think you can pick in the facilities. You can just call the DHHS number. Say, I'd really like to talk to somebody about, working at one of these facilities. And somebody they'll get it around to somebody. I get those every once in a while, and I'm glad to talk to people. And I know that the leaders at these facilities, they're glad to talk to people too. They want to get good people in.
All right, Tammy, before we end here, I want to put you on the hot seat,
That's,
have some
questions
in with a little bit of fun. So we'll start off easy, and it's going to be especially easy, I think, here, but Coke or Pepsi?
Actually, classic Coke is my absolute favorite, but I can't handle all the sugar. So Diet Coke is my go-to.
So do you like Coke Zero? Have you tried Coke Zero?
It's okay. There's a little difference there. Yeah. That'll be my next one if I can't get the regular Diet Coke.
All right, dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Yeah, I totally agree on that one. What would your dream vacation destination be?
Probably New Zealand, Australia area. My favorite is, I've done it twice now, the Inside Passage to Alaska and then the land tour. And everything else pales in comparison because it is so big and vast and beautiful. There isn't a direction you can't look that isn't gorgeous there.
Tell us something interesting about yourself that people may not know.
My first job that I paid taxes on, I was a scorekeeper at a gun club. They did a shoot in the summer where they did, Mid-America shotgun shoot. And I became a scorekeeper for the skeet, so the high house, the low houses and stuff. My brothers were trap boys. And I think it was kind of my dad's way of getting to go and shoot, on a league and stuff. So we did, league nights and things like that. But it was probably my first experience being treated like an adult because we had to go through training, and nothing went on at that at that trap unless you said it was going on, and you could stop it at any time. So you got 5 people there with 12-gauge shotguns, and you're saying, no, we're not going on because they shot a dud or something, and you have to clear the barrel. And I stopped a whole group, and this guy was kind of giving me an up one side and down the other, questioning my parentage and many things. And the man who was our supervisor came over, and he looked at Jim, what's going on? And, of course, he continued to berate me, and he looked at me, and he said, what happened? I said, he wouldn't let me check the barrel, and he had a dud. And he said, you will let Tammy check your barrel. And lo and behold, there was a wad, and that's a piece that keeps the shot separated from the gunpowder. And if he would have shot that, it could have exploded in his face.
All right. If you had to change your first name, what would you change it to?
Oh, goodness. My mom told me I was supposed to be a Robin, and her good friend and her were pregnant at the same time. But then that movie came out, Tammy and the Bachelor, and so they named me Tammy, or Tamara. I had to be after a saint, But otherwise it would have been Robin. So I guess if Debbie Reynolds didn't have that song and my mom hadn't sung the movie, I would be a Robin. I don't know. But I like the name. So
seems like a good choice. What TV show do you love to binge?
Ooh, I was really into Game of Thrones, but I do like Outlander real well too. Breaking Bad was awful good too. So
I've
I'm hard time pinning down one. There's like 3, and some of those Game of Thrones. I think I've binged that whole thing more like 3 times now. Breaking Bad will be the next one I'll probably go to because it's been about 5 years since I saw that one. So
it's a good one. What's your favorite book?
Probably the book I've read the most is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be?
Career-wise, it would have probably been interesting to have a meal with Florence Nightingale because she was a statistician as well as into hygiene and nursing and being the mother of nursing. Otherwise, some of the greats, I'm a country music fan. I would have liked, Johnny Cash, I think, is an interesting fellow. He did a lot for music, but I think he tried to do a lot for people, too, and I would have liked to talk to him about those things.
Any final career advice for someone looking to start out their career?
There's a lot of people say, well, I didn't know about the rest of state government when I started. I thought I worked for the Lincoln Regional Center, and that was the only place I worked for. There was a whole agency, there. There's all kinds of other opportunities. And sometimes it's a matter of putting in a little bit of time to get to know where you're working, and then there's other options you can find out about. Otherwise, you can all over state government. My vacation, my sick time follows me, whether I go work for roads department or Nebraska Department of Veteran Affairs or whatever I work for, I get to take that with me. And there's ways to fit into so many different things. There's jobs that people don't even think about that are in part of state government. I think, working for Game and Parks would be a lot of fun. I know they work very hard and they don't get to fish all the time, which is something I'd kind of like to do more of. But still, there's so many different things that they can do. That whole idea about get your foot in the door, that whole idea about having that security, that having your vacation and sick and some retirement money, that's been solace to me, that I've really, I appreciate having that, and I wish more people had that.
Yeah, well, that's great advice, and it's a great way to kind of close out, just highlighting all the amazing opportunity across the state in so many different fields and the ability to grow your career throughout the state. So Tammy, thank you again for your time today. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been great to chat with you and learn more about your career. For our listeners, if you want to check out our great career opportunities, including those with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, go to statejobs.nebraska.gov and click on the Find a State Job link. While you're there, you can also find our Nebraska State Jobs social media channels, and we'd love to have you follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, where you can learn even more about our great careers available. Also encourage you to check us out on YouTube. You can either search for the Great Careers Podcast or the Nebraska Department of Administrative Services. If you find our Administrative Services page, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you're notified of when future podcast episodes drop. On behalf of our guest, Tammy, my co-host, Brian, and myself, Caitlin, I want to thank you for tuning in and learning more about the great careers here in the Good Life.